Our guest today, I would have to say, is at least my favourite pro wrestling personality today. He is the founder of F4WOnline.com, the host of Wrestling Observer Live, Chico BRYAN Alvarez. And again, Brian, as I said off air, thanks heaps for doing this. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Now, for those unfamiliar with yourself and F4W Online, which you can also find folks just searching Wrestling Observer, how did the website come about? And tell folks a bit about your weekly free radio show.
Well, I actually was doing a newsletter since 1995, and there used to be a lot of newsletters. Now there's almost none. There's like The Observer, The Torch, and my newsletter. And, it was when the wrestling war was hot, there were a lot of people reading it. And then when WCW died and a lot of people lost interest in wrestling, it was having a rough go. And so I was looking for a way to keep the thing alive because the cost of postage had raised so high that it was just getting really difficult to keep the thing going. So I was talking to my brother-in-law about it, and he did a lot of stuff with websites. And my idea was, let's do like an email version of the newsletter. So everybody can sign up. They can all save a little money. I don't have to print and mail the things out, and everybody wins. So he said, well, if you're going to do that, why don't you just do a website, and people can sign up, and they'll get a username and a password, and then they can access the newsletters that way. And I was like, how about that? He'd gotten the idea from porn websites, basically. This was like in 2005. And so I thought, all right, that's not a bad idea. And so
there's always one person that delves into that. Luckily for you, it turned out to be a great help, though.
He was that guy. And so he'd I don't know how much I should say about this, but he had a large collection of VHS and even beta tapes. And so I think he was ahead of the curve when everything went online. So anyway, he said you should do this website. So I let him put together the first ever website. And the next thing you know, we had these audio shows on there, and the thing picked up, and it's gone great. So that's kind of the story of how the website started. And then today we've got, the Wrestling Observer newsletters up there every week, Figure 4 Weeklies up there every week, radio shows every single day. I mean, there's enough stuff to last you your lifetime if you head up there and check it out. We got 6,000 radio shows in the archives. It's pretty crazy how much stuff is up there.
Yeah, if you're going to sign up for 1 month, you just think, oh, check it out. Trust me, folks, you're going to be stuck at F4W, because even that thread that I love in the radio shows forum, which has just got a heap of the old IATA shows and the stuff that isn't necessarily archived, but fans have contributed to, I guess, the archive overall. It's there's some amazing content there on the website.
Oh, yeah, there's I haven't even gone through I've never really re-listened to any of those IATA shows, but people like them, and they're up there. So if you want to listen to the old stuff when WCW was still around and we were reviewing it weekly, you can go up there and listen to that too.
So Brian, you ended up hooking up with Dave Meltzer, and you kind of brought your websites together. How'd you meet up and hook up with Dave Meltzer? Well,
I had done a wrestling, one of those 900 lines, like the old WCW hotline, the 1-900-909-9900. We had one for the newsletter. And I started it because everybody who had a newsletter had one. And the problem was they had a lot more readers than I did. And so they had a good go of it, and I had a rough go of it because I had a very limited number of subscribers and the overhead was very high. And the bigger issue was there was a law here in the States that, as a result of porn, by the way, this all ties back to porn. I never really thought about this, but
doesn't it always?
It always does. There was a law that if, let's say that you had a kid and they called the sex line and they rang up like a $600 bill, you could go to the phone company and say, listen, my kid did this without my permission. I didn't give him permission to use the card, blah, blah, blah. And you didn't have to pay the charges. And it was called a chargeback. And the company, the provider, was required to take the hit. So the problem was if it was 99 cents a minute, the provider, who would be me, I only got like 24 cents of that 99 cents. But if somebody requested a chargeback, I owed the whole 99 cents. And so I had an issue where someone called the Figure 4 hotline, and they rang up a gigantic bill, $2,000 worth, actually. Might have even been more. And his parents requested a chargeback, and guess who had to pay that? Me. And so that was pretty much the end of the Figure 4 hotline. And so I didn't know what to do. And so I'd been reading The Observer, and Dave had a hotline of his own. And so I called him and I said, listen, this thing went wrong with my hotline, but hey, I know that so-and-so, I can't remember who it was. Somebody was leaving his hotline. And I said, I'd love to take their place. And so I faxed him, actually, to tell you how long ago this was. And he called me back, and I think I got like option 3 or something like that. And so that's really how I hooked up with Dave. I did the Observer hotline, and then later we moved on to a Yada, and the rest is history.
The Death of WCW book. It was originally released in 2004, and your mate R.D. Reynolds, he co-wrote it with you. He's the brains behind WrestleCrap.com, folks. So if you're familiar with his work, then you'll enjoy this book. Did the idea come about as soon as Vince brought up WCW, or as soon as there was talk of it, you thought, like, hang on, there's a really good story here?
I can't take any credit for it because this was all RD.
Okay.
He had written WrestleCrap, and it was a really successful book. The publisher had always been asking him, like, when are you going to write another book? When WCW died, he was kind of like, man, there's a story here. He'd been a subscriber. So he contacted me, and he just said, do you have any interest in writing a book? And I'd always wanted to write a book since I was a little kid. And so I was like, of course I have interest in writing a book. What a silly question that is. I didn't know what writing a book was all about. I figured it would be easy. So I was his co-author, and we bandied about a bunch of different ideas about how to write this book. It evolved a lot, suffice to say. And at the end of the day, we came up with what we came up with originally. We wrote much, much more than went into the first book, which is why there's now an expanded edition. At the time, back then when I did the newsletter, it was much larger than it is today. It was 12 pages. I was writing 30,000 words or so a week, 20 to 30,000. And they gave us, I think, 120,000 words. And I wrote a little more than half. So let's say that I wrote, 80,000 words. We're talking the equivalent of like 4 newsletters, 4 Figure 4 weeklies. I was supposed to tell the story of the entire rise and fall of WCW in 4 newsletters. So it didn't work out, and they edited it like crazy. It's still a good book, but there was so much stuff that they took out of the original, and it's now all back in. It's 40% bigger now, but that was really how the book came about. They wanted a book. They didn't want a big book. The two of us wrote it together, and that was that.
With reviewing the WCW pay-per-views for the Butts and Seats podcast, at the moment we're up to Uncensored 98, and what I took away from that show after we'd reviewed it is that WCW was starting to, I guess, lose fans' trust. The ending of that pay-per-view, you've got a cage match between Hogan and Randy Savage, no finish in your main event. And this is in the same month where WWF were gearing up to have Austin and Michaels with Mike Tyson on the outside of the ring at the same time. I mean, you can't blame fans for turning on the product, and even us reviewing it. Sometimes I think, are we too harsh on this stuff? But really, we're not, because what they were serving up at the time. I mean, do you think that things like that bad finishes on pay-per-view, screwing the fans out of a good finish, do you think that's one of a key thing that contributed at least to driving fans away, was those pay-per-view finishes?
The problem was WCW went through a lot of different phases. 2 phases, the rise and the fall. When everything is going great and business is on fire, you can do a lot of stupid stuff, and that's exactly what they did. And you can do stupid stuff, and fans will keep coming back. And unfortunately, when you get into the habit of, we didn't give them a finish, but they're still back for this show, blah blah blah. You kind of get into a holding pattern, and you believe that you'll always be able to do this.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, when things start to go south, and more importantly, there's another option on the other channel where people are getting a good product, where they're getting finishes. There's an alternative. When there's an alternative, you can't necessarily do the same stuff that you were doing when you were far and away number one. And that was the problem. One of Bischoff's problems was he had a lot of really good ideas at the beginning of the WCW run. The NWO, Nitro, all that stuff. A lot of great ideas. Unfortunately, just because you've got a great idea one year doesn't mean that idea is going to work forever. You may have to evolve your idea. You may have to make some changes. And unfortunately, he didn't make any of those changes. It was like, okay, well, Hulk Hogan did big business for us. So as long as we put Hulk Hogan in the main event forever, it'll be a success. And obviously that was not the case. And they didn't create new stars. And some of the stupid stuff that they did when they were hot, they start doing that stuff when there's another option for people, and they tune out. And that's what started to happen.
So at one point...
sorry, go on, Sam.
At what point did WCW start to actually fall?
It depends on what you consider like a fall. I mean, when I first started noticing that things were going wrong, we're talking the spring of 1998, and I was seeing problems for the future at a time where their business was sky high. So if you want to say like when did you first figure out that there was trouble coming? It was 98. It was spring of 98 when business was still great. Business was still great. I have to look at the book for the exact time frame, but I mean, they were still doing good business like throughout 98 and into early 1999. Things didn't start really collapsing until mid and late 99, if I recall correctly. And they were making big time mistakes long before business started to fall. There's kind of a thing in wrestling where if things aren't going great, you panic and you try to turn them around the next week, and turnarounds never happen quickly. Turnarounds are always slow. They take time. And it's the same thing, going up or down. It's not like there was one moment where all of a sudden WCW took off. It wasn't like there was one moment where all of a sudden the whole thing died. It was like a gradual turnaround on the way up, and it was a gradual turnaround on the way down. But you could see all the stupid things. Actually, you could see all the smart things on the way up. You could see all the stupid things on the way down. You could point to things that were big mistakes, but it wasn't like, they'd make one big mistake and the next day things were terrible. It was a slow, I don't even know the word. It slowly dissolved into doom is what happened.
And they were taking on water at that point.
Some of the storyline decisions as well. I mean, like one of my big ones was Dusty Rhodes turning heel and joining the NWO. There's some turns and there are some moments where people joined at the NWO and it was a great move. It seemed like this is a great, surprising move. But then you get moments like that where it's not even believable for the fans, I think, that followed WCW/NWA all these years. Dusty Rhodes to join the NWA, like, I mean, come on, it's quite ludicrous, and little things like that.
Well, it's funny because I've been doing a lot of interviews, and nobody has mentioned Dusty Rhodes joining the NWO yet. But somebody yesterday was talking about the when they changed the logo. This really bothered him, and it kind of got me thinking about how everybody has these little things that they remember that maybe they're the only person that cared about, but it was like something that really bothered them. And in like the grand scheme of things, I mean, if you look at the business as a whole, Dusty Rhodes joining the NWO didn't make any difference whatsoever.
Oh, absolutely. Totally.
But to you, it did. And it wasn't, it was kind of like, I'm sure because you were watching for so long, that may have been like the straw that broke the camel's back. You know what I mean? Everybody had a straw that broke the camel's back for them. And there are certain straws that, like, business-wise, you can say, okay, like, the finger poke of doom, that was a big one. But it seems like everybody who was a WCW fan had whatever the moment was, that maybe they were the only person that just could not believe that Dusty Rhodes joined the NWO. So much crap. You know what it's like? It's like when I boycotted Impact.
I was going to bring this up, funnily enough, because I did the same thing. Only the difference between you and me is that I'm still not watching. So
wow.
I can't.
I'd been watching so much bad Impact for so long. And for whatever reason, the one day that the Menagerie came out and Crazy Steve was there acting like an idiot, like in the grand scheme of things, this meant nothing. But for me, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And if somebody writes like Death of TNA and it's not me, and I interview him in like 5 years, I'm going to ask him, oh my God, do you remember the day when the Menagerie came out and Crazy Steve was acting like an idiot? And they'll be like, I barely remember that, and it didn't mean anything. But like to me, that was a big deal. Everybody has these moments.
Yep, I hear you totally. And that's one of the things that you're famous for is, the classic TNA rants. I mean, that's the thing, folks. If you are not enjoying watching the current televised wrestling product, the reviews over at F4W are way more entertaining sometimes than the TV, I tell you that. And yeah, -5 stars and all that, the classic stuff. I stopped watching TNA. I reckon it was just before you had your boycott earlier in the year. And it's just, I can't sit through bad storylines and angles and whatnot and just convoluted stuff, just for a decent 5-minute match, say, it's not worth it for me. Looking at TNA now, I know that your opinion is that they're pretty much dead in the water, if not for that lifeline that they'll thrown to the minute. Is there any updates on TNA where they could be headed?
I got nothing.
Okay. I got
nothing. The rumors are like CMT maybe. I just the thing is, everybody is like positive about the future, and Dixie Carter keeps saying a lot of things, but I don't see evidence of anything. I don't see any. I don't know. Maybe they'll get CMT, maybe they'll get a WGN. I don't know. But I don't even know what it means, because even if they get a good television deal, what does that mean when you're drawing 200 people to a television taping? 3 more years of sad television?
The story that blew my mind, Brian, was when I think it was AJ Styles that was on your show, and he said that he was in a town and they went to a convenience store, him and his buddy, and somebody's wearing an AJ Styles shirt, and he's like, "Oh, cool, so you're going to the show?" And they're like, "What show?" "TNA tonight here in the town." Had no idea. And this is a guy who was a massive AJ Styles fan and didn't even know where his favorite wrestler was actually performing in his own town. Things like that blow my mind, really.
Yeah, there were a couple of shows that were here that were really good house shows. I had a great time going to them. But I'd go to these house shows and nobody was there. And I don't know, it's just there was no advertising. There was I knew because I followed wrestling, but all my other wrestling fans, they didn't even know that TNA was coming.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you see a lot of similarities besides the TV deal thing, between the WCW collapsing and what TNA is kind of doing right now?
Oh man, there's tons of it. The big thing is they hired all the same people. That's the number one thing. You have a company that loses $60 million, and they go and hire all the same people for a new startup. It's why would you do that? Imagine going out of business and starting a new company and deciding, I got a great group of people that are going to run this show. Same guys that ran the other one out of business. You look at the similarities between TNA in 2010, when they were trying to go head-to-head with Raw, and WCW at the end, are stunning. And amazingly, TNA was even dumber, because at least when Bischoff decided to go head-to-head with Raw, it was a period where WCW Saturday Night was doing good numbers. You know what I mean? Saturday Night, they were doing great numbers, and very similar to what Raw was doing. And so you could think, okay, well, we got this built-in audience. Let's put it on Monday opposite Raw, see what happens. And the next thing you know, there's a wrestling war. There were no similarities between TNA in 2010 and WCW in 1995. None. Not one. And we pointed this out many, many times in advance, and we said this is going to be a disaster. And it was exactly as big a disaster as we predicted, because you can't look back at something 15 years earlier, a different wrestling business, a different time in this country. Everything was different in 1995. And they thought, we'll just copy what happened in 1995. And what happened was, by trying to copy 1995, they ended up recreating 2001, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been watching those 95 Nitros and up to 96 now, because I've been burning through them. Because in Australia, we just got the network. It would have been about 2 months ago now. So really been getting into the content on there, and it's amazing the difference between the cohesiveness of the television in 95 and 96, and then watching those pay-per-views that we are in 98. The difference is just absolutely mind-blowing. But I want to talk about the network a little bit, because it's surprising to me that they still haven't added those extra years of Raw, Nitro. I mean, one of the points that you've made on your show, Brian, is the fact that, okay, I sit there and watch the Monday Night Wars documentary series, all well and good. I want to go and watch the final episode of Nitro. I can't do it. I want to go and watch the episode of Raw where Mick Foley won the belt. I can't do it. There's things like that that really do annoy me as well, but makes me wonder if they're doing this thing of holding off for the 6-month sign up, that moment where the commitment runs out and then people have to sign up for that 6 months again. It surprises me that they are so, or seem to be so fixated on that and teasing content and holding it off until that time comes around, because they do also have a $12.99 sign up where you can sign up for just 1 month and there's no 6-month commitment. So, I mean, there are going to be people around this time of the year that are going to, I guess, get that 1 month subscription, try it out, and then if they don't like it, go, okay, well, NBA season's starting now, I want to get League Pass, so I'm going to put my money towards that, or I'm going to put my $10 a month towards F4W online, you know, things like that. I mean,
good idea.
Very good idea. Very wise decision. Very, yes, economical, I must say. But it just shocks me that they hold off, you know, for that 6-month commitment period. What's your take on all that? I mean, because it's especially with the paper, like the pay-per-view builds lately just have been, I don't know, not doing it for me.
Well, a couple of things. I mean, first off, you know, if they didn't have the Monday Night Wars documentary series, it'd be like, okay, well, you know, you do have 2 years of Nitro, you got the same 2 years of Raw. People can go back and, you know, there is stuff for them to watch. But the idea that you're doing a documentary about all of the awesome stuff during the Monday Night Wars, and then you don't have those shows available on the network,
yep,
it's like, come on. I mean, this is just idiotic. And on top of that, you know, I've had people argue that, well, Brian, if you've got Netflix, let's say your favorite TV show is, I don't know, it's Finding Bigfoot, for example. You know, you can go up there and they've got maybe season 4 and 5, but they don't have the first 3 seasons. How is that any different than not having all of the Nitros up there and all of the Raws? And I mean, they're right to a degree, but to me, the problem is you have 2 options. You can either put everything on the WWE network, or you can be massively vigilant about what's available on YouTube. If you recall, like Steve Austin, WWE is now promoting his podcast on Raw, and so he has started promoting the WWE Network on his podcast. But prior to that, Austin was not promoting the WWE Network. Austin would talk about things on his show that he had seen on YouTube. And if you have a WWE Network, and the hottest period of business in wrestling's existence in the modern era was the Monday Night Wars, and you don't put the Monday Night Wars on the WWE Network, and those same shows are available on YouTube, it's like, can you possibly make a bigger mistake than this? I don't think that you can, to be honest with you. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me. Like, either hire a team, and I know they spent millions of dollars hiring people to work on the WWE Network. Either hire a team that stays up all day and they go to YouTube and they send the takedown notices for all of this old WWE stuff. You either got to do that and they're working 24/7 to take things off YouTube, or just put everything on the WWE Network. And this thing they're doing right now where it's not on the network but it is on YouTube, it's just like, it's amazing to me. I can't even fathom it.
Yeah, it's also strange because, you know, you'd think that the era that we're in of binge watching things, and you'd want to sit there, watch 4 weeks worth of Nitro and then go, okay, sweet. Now I can sit there and watch the pay-per-view and see it all in sequence as you would back in 1997, 98. Exactly. But you can't do it. You know, that's the main thing I was looking forward to with the network, is watching all of that WCW, ECW content in order, and even the Raws, you know. So
they never like promised that all of the Raw and Nitros were going to be on there. But if you watch the programming leading up to the network launch, that was certainly the impression that you got as a fan. Yep. I remember that I used to have arguments with Dave about this, and he'd go, they don't need all of the Raws and Nitros. They can add them slowly. They've got all of the pay-per-views up there. And it's like, what good is watching a pay-per-view if you have not seen any of the build leading up to the pay-per-view?
It's not as much fun, no.
Yeah, like you're going to just go watch a standalone Halloween Havoc, and all of a sudden there's the Big Show and the Giant on a building with monster trucks. It's like, what?
What's going on here?
Why are they in a building in trucks? Because I don't get to see the television.
Yeah, the WWE Network. It's a really good tool, but I completely agree with you guys that they don't have enough stuff on there. Right now, I only really watch the pay-per-views on there. There's not a lot of destination television, and I feel like they would do a lot better if they would make like AWA Tuesday nights and Saturday night they would put out a brand new episode of Saturday Night's Main Event with a little hashtag in the corner and make it more of a community thing. I feel like they don't utilize the live stream good enough right now.
Yeah,
how do you feel about the live stream?
I haven't watched. I mean, when I first got the network, it was cool to always have the live stream on in the background, but I don't even do that anymore.
Sometimes it's the same thing all day. It's
I mean,
same pay-per-views.
Who's sitting there and just having the live stream on all day? I don't know. Well, I've got the network right now. What they got to realize is that we're in an on-demand society now. We're in an on-demand binge-watching society, and people don't want to sit there and just have the live stream running all day and, oh, man, I want to watch the newest Monday Night Wars. I'll wait till 8 p.m. Nobody does that. If you want to watch the Monday Night Wars or any particular pay-per-view, you go up there and you grab it when you want it. And if you want to watch like all of the Nitros from 1995, you sit down on a Saturday, you just start watching, one right after the other. No one watches. I'm sure that some people will watch the live stream, but the big deal, especially with the technology and the people that they're trying to attract, which are people that utilize this technology. Who utilizes technology like this? People that get Netflix, people that get Hulu. Netflix and Hulu don't have this live stream that people are watching. It's all on-demand binge watching. So if you're going to say it's like Netflix but better, then it should be like Netflix but better. And it's not.
I'm with you, Sam, on the live stream because they tend to show the same 3 or 4 programs all day over and over and over and over. And it's kind of like, yeah, they could do better things, I think, even just putting in different little clips here and there on the live stream between shows even, just to make it interesting, Live
stream is great if you've got like a channel on the television.
Yeah, I guess so.
But this is not a television channel. This is an internet-based, over-the-top, or whatever they call it, platform. And why it needs a live stream, I don't even know. Do either of you have Apple TV?
No.
Okay.
Well, Apple TV has like a whole bunch of channels. There's a Bloomberg channel, there's a Red Bull channel, there's a blah, 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 blah. I mean, how many people do you think are going in there to the Red Bull channel and watching the live stream? They're going in there and seeing what concerts they can find and they can watch on demand.
Yeah.
These Apple TV and Netflix and Hulu, I don't see anybody getting those. I mean, even if they had like a live stream feature, no one's utilizing that. They're utilizing it for the on-demand library. And what's funny is I plug my website all the time, and one of the talking points is we have 6,000 hours of audio in the archives. Now, nobody in their right mind should go listen to all 6,000 hours of audio unless you just really want to torture yourself. Some of the 2005 stuff is hilariously bad. But it's there. And I compare to the WWE Network, we have like, I think 3 times as much on demand in our library than WWE does in their network. How is that possible?
You got me. See, you stumped it right there. I got nothing for that.
So recently they launched in Canada, and it's a TV internet combo. Do you think that would be a better model for the U.S., or do you think the way it is now is better?
Well, obviously, a TV model where they're getting paid would be far superior. If you recall, like when the network was first launching, or we were first talking about doing a network, they wanted to do a television network. They wanted it to be like first they wanted it to be like Animal Planet or something, where you get this television. If you got basic cable, one of the channels is the WWE Network. That's what they wanted originally. And if they would have got that, oh my God, they'd be rolling in money today. Because they would have had a 24-hour channel. I would bet you anything they wouldn't have put the pay-per-views on there. They would still be making tons of revenue off pay-per-view. They'd be making tons of money off the network because they'd be getting, X number of cents per subscriber. They would be rolling in money. But nobody was willing to do this for them. And so that's why they developed the over-the-top model they have now. So they go to Canada and they actually get on they're on television, and it's been a gigantic success. And I think they're going to try and do the same thing in the UK. It's cool to have something like this, but it's not quite ready for prime time in the sense that they can get. And the other thing is they overestimated how many people would want to buy a Netflix style deal on the internet. The number was much smaller than they anticipated. And there were a lot of things that happened a lot of it was out of their control. I mean, they couldn't have done like a Canada-style thing here in this country, even if they wanted to, because nobody was willing to partner with them or take them on. So it wasn't going to work, but it certainly would have been like far more ideal than what they ended up doing.
A lot of wrestling journalists get attitude from some people in the business and say, like, yeah, if you're not a wrestler, you have no right to say this or that about, how we put on a show or how a match should be done or blah, blah, blah. I know your buddy Dave Meltzer from Wrestling Observer, he's, I think, unfairly copped that in the past because he knows his stuff. And you do too, but the difference is you are a wrestler. You've wrestled for some time. How do you see that mentality that is sort of that floats around? I mean, I myself, I'm a announcer and commentator with Right City Wrestling here in Adelaide. So I don't, when we put our podcast and have criticisms, we don't typically get that, luckily. But I know some folks in your field do. So I know it's not around as much as it used to be, that stigma. But what's your take on that?
Well, there's a lot of different criticisms. Like if you want to criticize Dave and say, Dave, you should not be reporting on wrestling because you've never wrestled, or you should not be able to say whether you think a match is good or bad because you've never wrestled. These people are idiots. Anybody is entitled to any opinion they want about anything. If Dave starts going in and I'm trying to think of like a good example. Of something that he would not be qualified to do because he hasn't wrestled. Maybe if Dave wanted to do, Dave was going to do like, I am going to host a in-ring seminar, how to be a pro wrestler. Dave Meltzer, I'm going to teach you how to bump. I'm going to teach you how to work a match. Obviously, this would be ridiculous. He's never wrestled in his life. But the idea that Dave is not allowed to say whether he thinks a match is good or bad, I mean, that's ridiculous. Dave is one of the smartest people. In fact, he may be the smartest person in the world in terms of wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
He's never had a match in his life. So unfair criticism. Listen, if a wrestler wants to criticize Dave for critiquing their matches, then he should just turn it right back around and say, you have no right to criticize me unless you've written a wrestling newsletter.
That's it.
So shut up. It's the same thing. If you want to say his newsletter sucks, you got the right to do that. He's got the right to say your match sucks.
No, I totally agree with you. It's just that, I've sort of seen that floated around, and some folks have had their opinions, especially on Big Dave. So I thought, just sort of throw it out there, and that's good to know. We do have some listener questions here. First up, Evan Hill, the wild card. He wants to know what, in your mind, was the very best part of WCW and their best run through the history of the company.
No, man, it's been a long time. I'd say probably like your 95, 96, 97. We're just now going back on the Bryan and Vinny show and rewatching all of the old Nitros.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying the 95 stuff for a lot of different reasons. But you can already see, I mean, it was 5 shows before they started freaking out and putting cage matches for free on Nitro. So I don't know how long Vinny, the bloom is already off the rose a little bit for Vinny, but we're going to see how long we can go before it really starts to suck. And it gets better, obviously, because the NWO invasion was hot starting in spring of 96. So, there was, I would say like probably the 96, 97 period was the best period in the company. But it depends on what you consider the best. If you're just talking about what's the funniest stuff, you got to go to 99, 2000. There was some hilarious. It was horrible, but it was funny.
You guys talking about Zodiac from 95? I tell you, that was so much fun.
It's amazing. This guy, wow. Zodiac.
/ Brutus / Man with No Name / I think
Booty
he had
Man.
something like 8. I think he had something like 18 gimmicks all up. Ed Leslie did in his career. Amazing.
The Booty Man, a classic, using the high knee finish.
High knee, yes.
High knee. I never got that. That's great.
There it is.
The high knee. Perfect.
It's actually kind of creative when you think about it. Kind of give him credit.
Just like Hugh Morris, the laughing man.
Exactly. Hugh Morris.
A lot of people say, why is he the man in charge of hiring the next generation and whatnot? When you actually hear the guy speak to a group of talent, you kind of understand it. Like, he's just got this attitude of not taking any bullshit, and at the same time, he's seen enough, I think, to know who might have it and who might not. Bill DeMott being in charge in NXT. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I don't really have I don't have a lot to say about Bill DeMott. I don't know the guy. I know that some people have been critical of him, obviously. My biggest issue with Bill DeMott is that he does the old WCW drill sergeant routine.
Oh, yeah.
Where when you first come in, you've got to do all of these conditioning drills. They want to see if you'll quit. And I just kind of think about, all right, well, how many people, first off, going back to the power plant, how many people did the power plant actually turn out? Not a lot of them. That's number one. And number two, if you took the entire WWE roster right now and you brought every single guy that is on the roster down to NXT and you put them through the exact same drills that you're putting all of these guys through, and you say that anybody who is on the main roster right now that cannot pass these drills is fired, you would have a roster consisting of probably Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler. And that's about it, which ain't much of a roster.
Oh, hey, some of the folks I've spoken to who were there was a 2-day tryout camp in Melbourne. I mean, some of these people have been through dojo training in Japan. I mean, they've been through the works, and they said that was the toughest 2 days of their entire life. Like, they were ready to just collapse at the end of it. They've never experienced anything like it.
Can you imagine how many potential superstars in the history of this business would never have got into wrestling if this was how they had to start? Like you mentioned Dusty Rhodes. Can you imagine if Dusty Rhodes had gone to developmental and they ran him and they made him throw up and they refused to look at him again?
Hulk Hogan. There you go.
Hogan. The list goes on and on. Virtually everybody wouldn't have made it through these drills. So I don't even know what the point of these drills are. I mean, I can understand that, like, if you show up to camp and you're not in like decent cosmetic shape, or if you're not in decent cosmetic shape, and I'm not talking like, Dusty Rhodes, he got really, really fat, but when he was young, he was not that fat. He was a big football player looking dude. Yep. And not everybody can have 8% body fat. You know, there's some guys that are just heavier. So but you should be in the best shape that you can be in, for example. You know what I mean? And then if you can go in there and do a moderate level of cardio for 20 minutes, what would be required for a WWE main eventer, then that should be sufficient for day one. The idea that you can go in there and and they try to kill you to find out if you want it enough. I mean, come on. The guys at the top in WWE, boy, do they want it. You don't think John Cena wants it? Try putting John Cena through this cardio thing that they've got down to NXT. Let me know how he does. He's probably going to fall apart doing it. Does that mean he shouldn't be a main eventer? He doesn't sell anything, or you know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Speaking of NXT, they recently signed, Kenta, Prince Devitt, and Kevin Steen. Kenta and Prince Devitt are kind of small, for WWE standards. And Kevin Steen, he lost some weight, but he's still a little bit overweight. Do you see these guys like having a ceiling? And I know like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan completely shattered the glass ceiling, but do you guys see these guys having a ceiling, or do you see them being huge stars in the future?
It all depends, there's no answer. It depends on how a guy gets over. It depends on how well a guy talks. It depends on how much merchandise. It depends on how the fans get behind him. You never know. Like when Daniel Bryan, look at how they treated Daniel Bryan when he first came in. He was a guy that the fans forced the company to make into a big-time eventer. And, Prince Devitt and Kevin Steen and Kenta, I mean, all of these guys, Sami Zayn, they're all very, very, very talented. But at the end of the day, they all have something working against them, because everybody knows what Vince McMahon, and not just Vince McMahon, but Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn. He's a very powerful man in WWE. Everybody knows what these two guys want to see in a WWE superstar. You've got to be big, you've got to be tall, you've got to be ripped, and you've got to have a good head of hair. So if you've got all of those things, like Roman Reigns, for example, they start grooming you to be the next guy. And you have to talk. You have to be able to talk. So if you don't have all of those things, you're already working against the system. And that's not to say that you can't get over. CM Punk, it was a very, very rough road for CM Punk, but he got over. But if you recall, despite the fact that he got over, and despite the fact that he can celebrate that he was the longest reigning WWE champion of the modern era, they never let him be the guy. They never even let him have a WrestleMania main event. That's why he quit and is never going to come back. They never let him have it, because no matter how good he was at everything else, he wasn't the type of guy that they see as the guy. But one thing that, and maybe Punk, I presume Punk doesn't care, but I think we were talking about this with Lance on another show. It ain't the worst thing in the world to be number 2. It ain't the worst thing in the world to be a longtime main eventer who can make millions of dollars, but they never let you be the guy. They never let you be John Cena. To be a success, Kevin Steen and Prince Devitt and all these guys, they don't have to be the next Hulk Hogan. They don't have to be the next John Cena. It's okay if they are in a Randy Orton position. In fact, that would be amazing if any of them could achieve a Randy Orton position for an extended period of time. That is a great career. There's nothing wrong with that. There's one guy per generation. Just because you don't get to be that guy, it should not be the end of the world. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of great roles in WWE. There's a lot of great ways to make money and be a big time success. I don't think any of those guys, as great as they are going to be the next John Cena. But that's all right. If they're the next Randy Orton or the next Daniel Bryan or the next whoever, that's great for them. So I think that they can all achieve that level, but again, they all have stuff working against them, and they're going to have to work very, very hard.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, to have a Hulk Hogan, you still have to have a Jake the Snake Roberts and a Big Boss Man and so forth.
A Brutus Beefcake.
There you go, a booty man.
A booty man.
Man, that's right.
Got another question here from one of our listeners, Chris Comain, a Wrestle Radio Australia listener. He says that there's some really great Australian talent out there, and I, for one, can vouch for that, Chris. Why do you think that historically Aussie talent has not really clicked in North America?
I don't really have a good answer. This is going to sound goofy, but I've heard that Kevin Dunn, who is, again, very, very powerful within the company, he doesn't like the accent. If you can even believe this.
I could understand that. With all the eccentricities that you hear about Kevin Dunn, I could totally get that.
Yeah, that's right. He that's always what I've heard. And you'll notice that Emma hasn't gotten like a really big push, and Adam Rose is not Australian, but he's got the accent, and
we're holding out for Buddy Murphy. He's our boys. He's our mate. So we're holding out for him, hoping that he does some good things.
It's possible, and it's also there's like there's a much lower, like percentage wise, there's significantly fewer guys coming out of Australia than there are out of the United States, for example. So you're always working against the odds. Same with really any country in the world. You're working against the odds. The odds of making it in WWE are difficult enough, and there's thousands of people that go to WWE tryouts within a few year period, and how many of those are coming from Australia? The number is very small, and so you're working against much more difficult odds to try to get there.
Yeah, I know that WWE, like when Bill DeMott was down here and he was having a chat to some of the wrestlers, he was basically saying to them that now, because they are doing more tryouts and whatnot at the Performance Center, that they're welcoming talent to apply and then come down there. Even if it means flying themselves halfway around the world, then so be it. That's a chance that you take. That's what Buddy did. He did a tryout down here when they came to do a live show, and then off his own back, about 6 months later, he just went, screw this. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to get on a plane, go over there, and go to one of these tryouts at the Performance Center, and it turned out to be a blessing for him, because they fell in love with him. They loved his work, and they took him on board. But there's so much. That's the thing, is that there's so much great Aussie talent every week doing this stuff.
The talent. Just let me say this, because I was ranting about this last night on the show.
Yeah.
WWE has cut the payouts to the enhancement talent, or the people that come and, for example, be a Rosebud. They're cutting costs, and the costs have dropped from like $250 a shot to $100 a shot. And Dave was writing in the Observer about how, a lot of the guys in the Northeast, I can't remember what show it was, but they didn't go because their idea was, well, if you take into account the transportation costs, the gas, the tolls, we lose money by going out there and being enhancement. And when I heard that, I was just like, you may as well just get a job at Quiznos. You know what I mean? Like, come on. I mean, you want to be a WWE wrestler and you're not going to go and get a look-see because you don't want to lose a little bit of money on the trip? What do you think this is?
Yep.
If I want to be an actor, I got to go to LA with nothing. I got to drive down there. I got to pack up all my stuff. I got to pay for an apartment every month. I got to bust my ass going to 9 million. You think Steve Austin didn't bust his ass going to 9 million auditions when he was trying to get acting work? You think Steve Austin was going down there and going, oh man, if I can't make a profit on this one, I ain't going to try out for this role? Of course not. Like, if you want to be something in wrestling, you may lose a little bit of money on the way up. It's called an investment in your future. I couldn't even believe that. The idea that it just is mind-boggling to me that because you're not going to make money on your trip to get a WWE tryout, you're just not going to go. Every look-see, you never know who might be there and go, oh man, look at this Mandy Leon. Sign her to a deal right now. You never know when this might happen. Yep. And you know what? It's not going to happen if you're not there because you decided to sit home and watch the show on television because you might lose a little bit of money on the trip.
Agree with you there, and it's just, you know, the fact that there are folks that are going overseas to get trained, you know, and not even with the promise of being in WWE. They're heading over there to Lance Storms. The amount of Australian folks, just alone Australians that have gone over to Lancers and thought, okay, well, this
Storm is paying them for training.
Yeah, that's it. They're going over there with the thought of, okay, this next 3 months is going to hold me in such great stead because when I do go to WWE, when I do apply to them, I can say, hey, I've been to Lance's. You know, I've had him watch over me. I've had him nut out all the bad habits, you know, from my work. I've been under Lance for 3 months or for 6 months or whatever it is. Like, this looks good on my resume. The fact that people would blow off that Rosebud gig is hilarious, really. If unless they just didn't want it. I mean, I've heard that some of the Full Sail students sort of get roped into it, or if they're doing courses there that are involved with NXT, then they get roped into being a Rosebud. But even still, that's part of the experience of being part of the production. So it is quite mind blowing, really. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I do stand up comedy, and I've lost a lot of money doing that, a lot more than I made. That's for damn sure. I have a reader question for you, Brian. Now, this is from Michael Roach. So keep in mind, I heard you do an interview recently, and you said there's nothing worse than WCW 2000. So his question is, which match is worse? Jenna Marasco versus Sharmell from Victory Road 2009, or the infamous Sting versus Jeff Hardy from Victory Road 2011?
Oh man, the Sting and Jeff Hardy didn't even count as a match. It was just
no, it kind of didn't.
As far as like a match that was actually a match, then yeah, Jenna Marasca and Sharmell was far worse. Maybe the worst match of all time.
Eva and what's her name? The other one at the moment that's stinking up the television on Raw.
Cameron
Mendez.
That's the one, Rosa.
Rosa Mendez, yeah.
It's any one of those divas.
They'd give that match a run for their money, I think. Yes, definitely. And just got another one here from Kyle DeMock. I hope I got your surname right, buddy. Apologies if I didn't. He wants to know if you think, Brian, if there's any chance of WWE coming down here, considering that there's house shows in Sydney and Melbourne that aren't really drawing that are drawing more than pay-per-views and Raw. Do you think that they might head down here, maybe do some WWE network tapings or TV tapings? Because, I mean, we've had the Global Warning Tour, or show. It was the one-off show, I think, in 2003 or 4. And there's never been a Raw taping, a SmackDown taping. Nitro did it WCW did it back in 2000, but do you think there's more of a chance now with the network that they'll do more regionalized programming even, or get a Raw taping down here, maybe?
I don't know. I don't even know why they don't tape television there. I mean, they do tape shows from the UK. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer, but I don't know anything really about their schedule or their touring plans or anything like that, so I really can't help.
If you taped a Raw episode in Melbourne with a wild Melbourne crowd, it would produce it'd look great on TV. It'd look and sound awesome. So, I mean, I don't know why they haven't.
Running house shows there. It's like if you're running a house show, just do a TV taping. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, well, they do house show tours usually every 12 months. I know that Adelaide and Brisbane were skipped this year because I think ticket sales were down or scheduling conflicts, and so they couldn't do it. But we're holding out, Kyle. Don't worry, you're not the only one that's wanting to get a tour down here. So before we let you go, Brian, I just want to say massive thank you for having a chat. As I said at the start of the show, I'm just a really big fan of everything that you do, and that Vinny and Dave and everyone over at the website. Just it's there's nothing like when you're having a bad day or something, and then you pop on a Bryan and Vinny show or the Lance show or the show with Todd Martin, where you guys just are at each other's throats half the time. It's awesome fun. So on behalf of anyone that does actually listen to your stuff, I just want to say a big thanks for all the audio over time. It's really, really cool.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Very, very cool. And Sam, do we have anything more for Bryan before we wrap it up?
I want to actually get back to the book real quick for a second.
Cool.
Ironically, this book could have been called Russell Crap the Book, WCW. It's being re-released. How much more of the book is being added? Because I heard that you said there's some stuff being added to the book.
We got 40% new stuff in there. A lot of it is stuff that was cut out of the original. And we've also added, there's a new foreword by Dave. There's a new chapter on TNA. I added, not just adding stuff in, but I rewrote but I wrote some new stuff about a lot of pre-1995 history. I added a ton, so much that I almost had to break it into multiple chapters. And then I really beefed up the year 2000 because that is a historic year in pro wrestling. It's a historic year in the universe because it is the worst year for a wrestling promotion in the entire history of the universe. So I beefed that one up a bit. So if you liked the first book, I mean, it's essentially it's the same book, but it's a greatly enhanced version of the same book. And if you didn't read the book, it's a brand new book for you. So I think that everybody, whether you bought the first one or not, is really going to like the second one.
I'm putting my order in this week, and just quietly, Bryan, I will be getting the hard copy. I'm going to make your day.
That does make my day. Even though I make the least amount of money, it makes my day.
I thought you would like that. I'm definitely gonna do my part for the Empire. Most definitely. So I guess that pretty much wraps us up, Bryan. Before we do let you go, get the plugs out of the way. Where can people find you on the Twitters, Facebook, F4W Online? Where can people get the book, Death of WCW? It is out now, folks. Tell them all about it.
Well, depending on where you live in the world, it is going to be available in bookstores in 6 days.
Okay.
It will expand around the world over the next month or so. I know a lot of people that have ordered in the U.S. have already gotten their book on Amazon. It appears that more and more books are shipping every single day. We got a ton of those already out, people reading and loving, I might add, the book. So head to Amazon.com or your local bookseller. And if it's not there, request it, and they will get it in for you. The website is WrestlingObserver.com. Daily radio shows, usually 2 shows every single day. Over 6,000 shows in the archive. So if you love wrestling radio and you just can't get enough, no better place than WrestlingObserver.com to, literally, you could go cross-country and just be listening to new shows all the way there and back repeatedly. Probably to the moon and back. I'd have to do the math. But a lot of audio up there. There's the Wrestling Observer newsletter every week. There's back issues of the Observer. If you're a history fan, there is Figure 4 Weekly. We got news. So much stuff up there. And, of course, there are links to my Twitter, @Bryan Alvarez, Facebook, facebook.com/Bryan Alvarez. All up there at WrestlingObserver.com. So sign up. I think you will love it.
I can guarantee that will be the case. You will love it. Sam, I guess that just about wraps us up, yeah?
Yes, thank you very much, Bryan. It's been an honor to talk to you. It's been really fun.
Yeah, thanks so much, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Very much appreciate it, Bryan. This is, as a podcaster, this has made my day. So I'm absolutely stoked to be able to have this chat with you. And I'm sure that in a couple of years, when you get around to writing the Death of TNA, we'll have a chat to you again.
I would love to come back. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Gonna put some butts in the seat.
Ooh, yeah. Relive the madness of WCW in the late 90s with Butts in Seats podcast. Twice a month, there's a new pay-per-view review with drops, music, commentary, insight, historical facts, and hilarity, yeah. Hosted by the USA's Frank Harris.
The way they handled it was amazing.
Australia's Josh Armour.
I had my Kevin Nash moment, ladies and gentlemen.
And the Maple Leaf mofo Evan Hill, yeah.
Wild card, bitches! Yeah!
Snap into it on iTunes, Stitcher, and follow Butts in Seats Podcast on Twitter @Butts in Seats Pod. Dig it!
Geeks of the Industry presents Pro Wrestling Nation, hosted by Bay Area comedian Funky Sam Medina.
Hashtag killing.
Go check out Pro Wrestling Nation right now on iTunes, Stitcher, RedDragonsRadio.com, and of course, GeeksOfMinistry.com.
Warning! This video contains adult content not suitable for children.
The Saga Pod travels you around site to site, delivering you the hottest, sexiest news on the internet. This is the kind of news you've always wanted, and just the way you wanted to hear it, naked.
So hot.
Ready to go wild. This is the hottest news ever, and here's the good part. You get to hear it told you by 3 assholes. These hot co-eds go wild all over your ear holes. Get the Saga Pod for free on iTunes and Stitcher.
I am the hottest girl in America.
But wait, if you listen now, you'll get a second episode for free, and the third, and the fourth. So what are you waiting for? Get the Saga Pod now and go wild.
Recently on Wrestle Radio Australia, our second best of episode featured some of our favourite guests like Scrap Iron Adam Pearce.
Bryan Danielson's song on Ring of Honor was the final countdown by Europe. They wanted $20,000 US per time it was played. So Bryan usually won, so that would be 2 times per show. That's $40,000, and I don't give a shit who you were. We weren't paying $40,000 for anything.
And Mr. Juicy.
I touched Christy Hemming's boobs.
Also, Bryan Alvarez joined Funky Sam Medina and myself, Josh Armour, to talk death of WCW, TNA, and the WWE Network.
What good is watching a pay-per-view if you have not seen any of the build leading up to the pay-per-view?
It's not as much fun, no.
Yeah, like you're going to just go watch a standalone Halloween Havoc and all of a sudden there's the Big Show and the Giant on a building with monster trucks. It's like, what?
What's going on here?
Why are they in a building in trucks? Because I don't get to see the television.
It's free on iTunes, Stitcher, Beyond Pod, TuneIn Radio, and FNXstream.com. It's Wrestle Radio Australia.
Geeks of the Industry presents Pro Wrestling Nation, hosted by Bay Area comedian Funky Sam Medina.
Hashtag killing.
Go check out Pro Wrestling Nation right now on iTunes, Stitcher, RedDragonsRadio.com, and of course, GeeksOfMinistry.com.